Hello and welcome. This is a A2 OCR F585 Economics video, and that's actually the first time I've been able to say it without going off, for God's sake. I mean, to redo the whole thing, so you are quite lucky. Anyway, so in this video, what I'm going to be looking at, I'm going to start looking at development, okay? That was kind of the last topic before I go over the June 2015, well, it's the last one that I'm doing, and why I say that, because it probably definitely won't be the last one I upload. Probably not. I don't know. It's development, alright? Part 1, video 1 of development, and then after this video, after the development videos, I'm going to be putting up the pre-release material, actually. That's it. Okay, so development, right? So what actually is development? Well, obviously to different people it means different things, but in essence it means to progress, to achieve, to build on something, to make it better. But obviously, we're in economics, we can't just go, well, whatever definition you want of development, give it and you'll get marks for it. Because then obviously, you know, you have to revise things in economics, and you can't revise something you make up. Well, you can, but that's beside the point. Alright, okay, so development, in the key definition that you need to be able to understand is, development is essentially removing or alienating, getting rid of poverty within the context of a growing economy. Okay, so basically, in essence, it's saying everyone's experience of life, standard of living, which is something we're going to come on to in a minute, increases, and everyone has a general better quality of life. Okay, in terms of, you know, material and non-material aspects. Okay, so that's what we mean by, obviously, development. Now, what I want to start off with first, just have to mention development, obviously, is there was a person called Micheal Torados, I don't know, something, and he came up with three points that an economy must achieve to be able to be considered to be a developing or a growing economy. Okay, and the first one was quite sort of what you'd expect, with removing people, getting people out of poverty. Essentially, you provide them with food, shelter, warmth, clothing, that kind of thing. So, really, things that we would consider basic necessities, okay? So, that is one. So, basic necessities are greatly distributed, or more greatly distributed. The next thing is kind of what I was mentioning before, and it almost goes off the first point. It's that everyone in poverty and across the general levels of the wealth within the economy experience an increase in their standard of living. Okay, so increase in SFL. I'm just going to write SFL because I'm lazy, and, well, as I said, you know, in various videos I can do this, so why not? But obviously, you know, in the exam, you might have to actually write full sentences, believe it or not. So, you know, you probably can't get away with that. But, you know, if you want to waste your life, please do go ahead and try that. You might get a nice examiner at the end of the day. Anyway, this third one is a little bit more obscure, okay? What it is, really, is basically it's the freedom of social economic choice. Social and economic choice. In my head, I keep referring it to socio-economic choice, and that's purely because I'm a bit weird, and I think that might mean something else. But basically, what the hell does this mean? Freedom of social and economic choice? Well, obviously, the main thing with development is removing poverty. And obviously, someone in poverty, if we assume the situation before, of someone being in poverty, okay, they may not have the social choice to be able to, they might not have the choice to be able to go out and have a good night out. Obviously, I don't do that, and that's one of the times actually where I'm not joking about that. I don't. As you can see, this is my life. So, you know, don't have much of a social one. So I don't have much of a choice in that. But obviously, I'd like to think I'm not in poverty, purely because, you know, I've got this fancy electronic device there, and this whatever the hell this is. Alright, anyway, so what I'm saying is this freedom of social and economic choice is basically the ability, not necessarily that they will, obviously, but it's just the ability for them to participate in social events. Or when we talk about economic choice, it's about schools, okay? Can they attend the school, you know? Obviously, maybe universities are a little bit different because obviously you may not be in poverty, but may not, well, yeah, you may not be able to afford university even if you're not in poverty, okay? You might be in relative poverty, but as I said, that's a different thing. What we're assuming here is people are getting out of absolute poverty, okay? And obviously relative poverty is also reducing, but really development is mainly concerned with absolute poverty, okay? So, as I said, there is a video on poverty, don't know if it's up yet, but it'll be in the F585 or F583, I don't know, some playlist somewhere, okay, for economics, A2. Right, so they're the three things that this person called Micheal Torados came up with. I mean, if you think about it, he's not actually invented them. He just said, oh, this is what a developed economy is. So, if you want to be an economist, just come up with three things that ever you want to say, oh, well, this is a developing economy, and you get paid a boatload of money to turn your backside. Now, I'm pretty sure there's more to being an economist than that, but that's as far as I can say. Anyway, so there are three things that he came up with to kind of say, well, developing economies, and to try to shorten the video down and take parts of words apart, okay? Anyway, so that is three things that he came up with that kind of, you know, the economies which are developing must achieve. Alright? Now, actually, I don't know why I crossed out, because there's one more thing I want to talk about with these. Now, you may be going, hang on a second. The context of growing economies, well, that obviously is considered with economic growth. And if we think about things that are achieved through economic growth, we can quite easily say, well, these three things are caused as a result, consequence of the economy growing. And if the economy grows, then obviously there's going to be more goods and services we assume to be in the economy. We assume also these to be passed down to the people in the lower poverty levels, okay, not just held by the rich. Okay, so obviously that's better quality of life for everyone, and obviously people have got more material than non-material things, and we also assume that to be the increase in the standard of living. And if there's an increase in the economy, the development of the economy through growth, okay, there's more freedom of social and economic choice, because more people have a greater income, etc., etc. Now, we've done a lot of assumptions there, and we need to talk about that, because development and economic growth are two different things. I mean, you know, we can't have development without economic growth, but economic growth on its own is not enough. And there's quite a few things. I mean, there's nothing in terms of concepts new that we're going to bring up, hopefully. But it's just about applying what you already know to this situation. Okay, so as I said, we've done many assumptions. Now, the first assumption I mentioned in my rather crude explanation of this is the trickle-down effect. Is there a trickle-down effect? Okay, so just to recap, the trickle-down effect is basically, is the wealth shared or is it kept in the hands of the rich? Are the rich like, you know, stiff upper lip, and we're going to, you in your pathetic little, whatever it is, and I'll just roll past in my $1 million supercar, okay? But the economy's growing, I'm bothered about poverty. Obviously, that's the effect of all rich people, that's the thing they have. Not, you know, pointing out any flaws or anything, but, you know. It's obviously George Osborne's idea of, it's probably you draw a cartoon, he'd be in a supercar passing someone and taking the money off a poor person, but, you know, that's for a different thing. And he probably won't be watching this video, so I can say whatever I want about him. Right, anyway, so, well, I say hopefully, he's probably not going to be watching this video. I very doubt it, to be honest. It's probably just going to be me watching this video. But anyway, so, as I said, that's one of the main assumptions that we make, the trickle-down effect. That we assume there is a trickle-down effect, okay, if we relate economic growth to this. The next one is, well, is it sustainable? Now, as I said, this may not be as obvious as obviously the trickle-down effect is. And obviously, the reason why it needs to be sustainable, okay, is economic growth. If suddenly we use up all the resources, say our resources are going to last us, a given set of resources are going to last us 100 years. Obviously, this is completely out of context, alright, but, you know, it'd be like 10 times 8 to the 9 years or whatever, and you'd get confused. But I'm just saying, say for example, we had 100 years left, years worth of resources left and necessities, okay, and we just gave them all to everyone straight away. There'd be no increase in standard of living, there'd be no development, the economy just develop and then eventually go back down. Right? That wouldn't be very good, obviously. So is it sustainable? That's one. Now the next one is actually kind of relevant to today's technological world, where we looked, and in business studies in my first year playlist, we looked at, well, you know, is it involved with humans or robots, okay? Or, you know, is it capital intensive or is it labour intensive? And that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about this assumption of economic growth. We assume, okay, because if standards of living increase, that must be because people have got greater income, greater ability to spend, so therefore their standard of living increases in terms of material and non-materialistic, okay, in terms of their healthcare is a non-material. Alright? So if the robots are taking over the world, taking over jobs, then obviously this is going to be the opposite. So we could have economic growth where robots are leading the economic development, slowly taking over the world, and you know they undo it, and it's probably a little, you know, someone, Jeremy Clarkson in a robot, okay, and they go, I'm going to flatten the world and put a Ferrari on it. Anyway, so what we're saying here is it led by robots? Is it a robot domination, or is it human led? Obviously, if it's robot led, then there is going to be no increase in income. There's actually going to be a fall in income, obviously, because people put out jobs, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the three things. Now, there's another thing as well that we assumed within this. Now, standard of living. Now, we don't just, as I said, we classify standard of living into non-material and material. Now, one of the things I mentioned in non-material was the healthcare. Now, another example of an increase of the standard of living that is non-materialistic without healthcare is sort of, well, as I say, it goes off health, sort of. It's sort of pollution. Okay. Now, obviously, you're not going to write pollution. What I'm going to write is negative externalities. Okay. Now, just to give you a quick recap on that. So, obviously, when the external cost is the social cost is bigger than the private cost, greater than an external cost, which impacts on the third party. So, F585 knowledge. Really, what we're talking about here is a negative externality of pollution, as I mentioned, okay? Because obviously, when the economy grows, the people who are ferrying the trucks around don't generally think of, you know, the people walking past, the fumes, etc. Okay, so there are really four things that we assume in this Micheal Torados 3 points of economic development. All right. Now, we've talked a little bit about what development is and things that economy needs to achieve to be able to achieve, you know, be considered to be a developed economy. But we can easily sit here and I'm studying it. It kind of defies the point. I could sit down. I'll sit down, right? Just to carry on because I can't be rearranging all my words, so I do apologise. I'll sit down. So I'm sat here, and we could easily sit here and talk about the three things which obviously impact on economic development. Okay. But it's very difficult to actually be able to just, I mean, how do you measure this? Okay, we talked about what it is that an economy must do to achieve economic development, but how do we actually go out and talk and measure this? Okay, because obviously we can't go out and say, have you got a house? Have you you got a shelter, etc., etc. Because that'd be, you know, how do we do that? And also another thing is obviously each economy is going to have a different population. Okay, so it's going to be harder for an economy over another economy to be considered to be developing. Okay, we need to sort of work out, well, what is the average person like? And what I'm trying to get across here is we're looking at GNP per capita. Okay, so that is basically the World Bank, which is an organisation. So, the World Bank measures development. And it measures it, as we mentioned, through GNP. Now, obviously, it's GNP per capita, which is obviously per person. In other words, GNP per capita is gross national product per person within the economy. Okay, just to recap, gross national product is the value of all the goods and services produced by an economy's own factors of production, wherever they are located. So this might be in the UK or it might be abroad. But you've also got to remember any foreign-owned businesses which are based in the UK, the value of their output is not added to this. Okay, so that's obviously the difference between GNP and GDP. Right, and I say that's GNP per capita, which as I said is value of GNP over the population size. But when we use this to measure development, okay, because basically what this shows is it allows us to come up with a table. Alright, so basically the World Bank uses classifications, okay, of different economies. So economies are put into low. So this is in terms of their income, okay. So classifications are a low income, a low middle, an upper middle, and what do you think's next? No, it's not upper, it's actually high. Just to confuse you, they've just called the last one high. And for you drug dealers out there, that's, you know, not what you're thinking of. It's just highs in terms of high income. Alright, okay, so that's income. That's the classification. But how do we actually classify an economy as being in a low income, a medium income, or, you know, an upper middle or a high income? Well, what we do is we say, what is their GNP per capita, okay? If it is less than $1,045, then we consider it to be less than or equal to $1,045, and we consider it to be a low developed economy, a low income economy. A low middle economy is anything from $10,046 all the way up to $4,125. And then an upper middle economy is anywhere from $1,426 all the way up to $12,745. And this is per person, okay? This is output per person per year. Alright? The high income is therefore anything over $12,746. Okay? But you can quite clearly say here, when we're going to compare country, not every country uses dollars as an example of their output, okay? So there's a value of their output. So how do we convert pounds or euros or whatever, francs, or yeah, going back in time even, how do we convert that to dollars? You might be going, well, we just clearly quite use the market exchange rate, but we don't. And that is purely because the market exchange rate is manipulated by governments all the time. Some governments use fixed exchange rates, some use variables in terms of free floating exchange rates, which I said that's the video, so you can check out that online. If it's up, I don't think it will be because my teacher's been off. So anyway, obviously I teach myself on that, you know. Okay, so what I'm saying here is how do we convert different currencies to dollars? Because we don't use the market exchange rate because it's manipulated by governments. So what we do is we use something called purchasing power parity, or PPP, obviously. Alright, purchasing power parity is all about basically a basket of goods and services is bought in various different countries. Okay, so it's almost like the CPI, but instead of just doing it in the UK and doing it for inflation, I mean, basically the only thing that's about CPI that's the same as purchasing power parity is a basket of goods and services, okay? Which essentially says what it is, okay? So a basket of goods and services is compared, the value of it, basket of goods and services, is compared in different countries, okay? Where obviously they have different currencies. And what they do is, there's one basket of goods in the America, for example, in America might be $100, and the same basket of goods or services might be £300 in the UK, for example. Alright, and then they would just use that as, they would cancel it down, so it'd be $1 equals £3, or, you know, a pound equals a third of a dollar, a conversion rate when people want to change, okay? So that'd be, that's what the World Bank uses to convert, so basically they work out GNP per capita. Obviously they'll get it in their own currency and use that, create a basket of goods, buy it in one country, buy it in another, compare the price, and then what we do is you would use that as an exchange rate to work out what the income is in dollars, and then use that and correspond it to this exact table and clarify, well, which one is a low income earner, which is a low middle, which is an upper middle, and which is a high income earner. Okay, and obviously, therefore, whatever category it fits in, you go, well, it's that type of development. Now, just as we assumed a number of things with Micheal Torados' idea of development, we also assume many things with GNP per capita. Because obviously development is so varied, okay? Because we looked at, well, has everyone got the basic necessities, and has everyone's standard of living increased, and has freedom, social and economic choice increased? This gives us an idea, because obviously it shows us economic growth, okay, in terms of, well, it doesn't show us economic growth, it shows us GNP per capita, obviously that's what it works out, because that's what, anyway. What I'm saying here is, it just gives, it gives, well, what state is the economy in? It doesn't actually tell us anything about, you know, what's the standard of living like, what's the basic, how, has everyone got the basic necessities? Have everyone got the choice of going to university or going to college or going to high school, okay? Or some form of basic education. Obviously university being the most basic, quite clearly. Right? Anyway, so that is really what we're talking about. So we make a number of assumptions, just like we did in Micheal Torados' idea, we'll make a couple of assumptions with GNP per capita. Now the first one is actually, we've related here to F581. I'm going to relate to F581 again. Now obviously you can come up with these in the varying order, but the one that relates to F581, okay, is something called an underground economy. I think I mentioned it in my F581 playlist. If I didn't, I'm sorry. Okay, so underground economy, and how is that an assumption of GNP per capita? Well, good question. Underground economies, as we know, are basically economies where people don't declare their income for some reason. Now, that is mainly due to two different reasons. The first being, it's illegal. I mean, you wouldn't get someone going, yeah, I make 25 grand a day. What do you do? Oh, I'm a crack cocaine dealer. Alright, okay, well, the Her Majesty government will go, alright, well, we'll take 25% tax off that and you can go about doing your daily business. You know, obviously they wouldn't declare that. Criminals, they're stupid, but they're not that stupid, although their integrity is questionable. Questionable rather than, you know, completely absurd. Alright, okay, so an underground economy, basically, how we apply this? Well, an underground economy adds to GDP. Obviously, it's a legal form of GDP, but it still adds to it, okay? And the money that is created by these illegal dealings, or, obviously, people don't want to declare it because they don't want to pay tax. I'm not going to say, I'm on nothing, but my bank account's 25 grand. We've got something with 25 grand associated with me. Anyway, so, what we're saying here is, they spend it in the economy. Okay, so it still adds to GNP per capita. There's still an additional GNP. So basically, what we're saying here is it's not included in GNP per capita. All right. So therefore, it's actually, even though it comes from an illegal source, it's still adding. It's still a form of work. Okay. So we're still adding to GNP, but we don't actually include it because we don't see it coming from somewhere. So GNP per capita of each country will be higher than it actually is, and obviously that could move it up into a different band and say, well, it's now a developed economy. Alright, now, one thing actually I will stress at this point, there's no, you know, obviously high shows a developed economy, but there's no thing that you can put and you say, well, that is a developed economy. It's all retrospective of other countries, okay? So, you know, one country might be low and one might be low middle, and the one that's in low middle would obviously be considered to be developed against low. But, you know, if you had a high developed economy, in terms of the high income, that is obviously more developed than a low middle or an upper middle. Okay, so it's just really how we compare it. So anyway, underground economies is one of the assumptions which we said was just where someone doesn't declare their income for tax or illegal reasons and adds to GNP, which we don't include. Okay, the next one is all about real terms. Now, what we generally, in this case, okay, because we converted it all to dollars, okay, they can't be bothered essentially to convert it, to take out the real value of inflation. They can't be able to bother to work out the real value, okay, so the real terms. So obviously what we include here is inflation within each country, which obviously therefore can have the detrimental effect, the very distorting effect, of actually saying an economy is more developed than it actually is, when quite clearly if you've got, relating to sort of, if you're good with your history, early Germany, sort of, I think really early, just sort of post First World War kind of thing, there was very high levels of, there was hyperinflation, okay, and obviously if there's hyperinflation, that, or inflation of any kind that's extreme, then obviously that would put the economy as very well developed, okay, in terms of very high income per person. But quite clearly, if you've got high inflation, the value of money decreases. So actually, they could be on a high income, but in really, there's not, okay. There would be a lot lower if you were to look at real terms. All right. Now the next one is income distribution, or I refer to it as income inequality. Now, as I said, this is per person. GNP per capita is total GNP over the number of people. So we assume it to be an average, but it doesn't actually show us the disparity between the high income earners and the low income earners. Now, as I said, this is an average. There might not be anyone in the country earning this amount that you work out, okay, GNP per capita per country. No one in that country might actually be earning that exact figure, okay. There may be everyone's earning really extreme amounts, but then there's loads of people which are also earning absolutely nothing. Alright, so it doesn't show, what we say here is, for the Micheal Torados side, is everyone has access to basic necessities and everyone's standard of living increases. Well, if only the top people are increasing their standard of living and the people in a lower economy, there's no trickle-down effect. If there's no trickle-down effect, GNP per capita might still be high, okay, which could indicate income inequality or lack of income distribution. The next one is composition of output, okay, and as I said, I think I mentioned this in F582 playlist. Composition of output. What we mainly discussing in this kind of context is it a capital good that's being produced, or is it a agricultural good? And the reason we talk about these is because, well, capital goods, obviously, they're going to be used for future. When we talk about investment, we talk about the purchase of capital goods. And when we talk about investment, we're looking at long-run aggregate supply curve shifting. So therefore, obviously, capital goods are something we consider to be preparing for the future. So it increases consumption in the future, essentially. Whereas agriculture is mainly, obviously, the production of perishable goods, okay, so it's stuff off the farmland. And obviously that kind of has to be consumed now, and obviously consumption won't be as great in the future, in terms of the short future, okay? So, composition of output. So that's why we talk about that. Now, the next one is defence expenditure, okay? So these are all the things that aren't included in GDP. So income inequality isn't included in GDP because we could have a high income, but it doesn't show that everyone's on that higher income. And composition of output isn't included in GNP per capita, quite clearly, because it doesn't say, oh, what are they selling? They might have a low income, but they could actually be developing for the future. Defence expenditure. Now, quite clearly, we know defence expenditure is obviously spending by the government on crime, policing, and the army, and navy, and that kind of thing, okay? But we talked about increasing the standard of living, and now if the government's spending more on defence expenditure, in terms of, if there's a civil war, or any wars of any kind, okay, that's clearly not going to improve the standard of living. They may have a very high GNP per capita, but if all that GNP is coming from government spending on bombing people, then that's probably quite bad. Okay, so that obviously is including GNP per capita, so it doesn't tell us, well, what has the spending actually come from. Okay, the next one kind of goes on from this negative externality stuff. This GNP per capita doesn't tell us the amount of pollution, okay? Now, one of the main countries sort of associated with this is China. They are improving, but they're still one of the, sort of uncleanest economies within the world at the moment, okay? So, quite clearly, GNP per capita, we could have a very developed economy, but whether it's controlling pollution or not, if it isn't controlling pollution and the air is very dirty, there's lots of smoke everywhere, then obviously that isn't going to increase someone's standard of living, okay, in terms of non-material things. Alright, so it relates to that, exactly that. The next one, what's leisure? Now, this one's always, when I was reading through this stumped me a little bit. I mean, obviously GNP per capita doesn't show this, but I guess what we would have to look at is the backward sloping labour supply curve, which is all the way back in F585 okay, so it was something that looked like that, where it sort of bends backwards, okay, and the reason why we relate this to leisure is because if the economy is growing, then in terms of GNP per capita increasing, more people can afford to take, if the wage increases past W, okay, where the curve starts to bend backwards, any increase in pay, they could increase GNP per capita, but it doesn't show us, well, is that actually due to people working less hours, or is that people due to working more? Which obviously, if they're working more, then their standard of living would decrease, okay? So you can kind of relate it in that way. The next one, and the last one, is life expectancy, okay? And if you have a longer life expectancy, that's good, unless everyone doesn't like you very much, then that's bad for everyone else. Alright, okay, so life expectancy, obviously GNP per capita, say, it's $10,045 plus 80 years, okay? Quite clearly it doesn't show that. So, therefore, we just say, well, life expectancy per person, and that isn't included in GNP per capita. So they're the main things, really. The only ones that I would kind of commit to, if I would, obviously I'm good at committing to memory, but the only ones that I would commit to memory, really, are the ones that you can really talk about. And because we mentioned F581, I would talk about the underground economies, I would talk about defence expenditure, and I would also mention income inequality, and if you can remember it, life expectancy. But really, I would only remember, as I said, you're going to get a massive question on this, what's the assumption of GNP per capita, it might be, a 6 marker or something. So I would just remember underground economies, defence expenditure, and income inequality. Okay, so remember, underground economies, defence expenditure, income inequality. Underground economies is coming from basically where where there's illegal or people don't want to declare their income, but it still adds to GNP, but we don't include it because obviously it's not been declared. Then obviously income inequality. Well, that comes from GNP per capita doesn't actually show us how distributed the income is. You could relate that to the Lorenz curve if you wanted to, and defence expenditure. Well, obviously that adds GNP per capita, but it doesn't increase standard of living. Like one of the things that Micheal Torados said that it needs to occur in a developing economy. Alright, so that is this video. Okay, there's nothing more that I want to talk about in this particular video. Okay, so that's the end of the first wave that we measure development. There is another method called the HDI, which is the Human Development Index, okay, which is something we're going to come on to in the next video. But I didn't want to make this one too long, really. It's already 33 minutes, okay. As I said, it's really just a case of, it's a bit of an introduction into development, what we mean by development, and kind of applying it. As I said, that table, you don't need to remember that. That is just, well, it's good if you do remember the classifications, but you don't have to remember the raw figures of the boundaries, okay? Alright, so thanks for watching. Sorry it's been a little bit too long, but hopefully you've managed to withstand it, or withstand it, I should say. Okay, so thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again in another video.